Welcome to the Cultivation Podcast. I am your host, Tom Hamill, and I am pumped about this episode. We're going to be talking about avoiding conflict and how important it is that we stop avoiding conflict, even though it can be painful, even though it can be nerve-wracking. We grow and we break through or have breakthroughs when we stop avoiding conflict. So let's get into it. I was thinking the other day about this. Some of my best friends growing up didn't start off that way. We actually started our relationship off as playground fights. Now, I know that we live in a different day and age than when I grew up in elementary school or in my lower grades, lower years, that sort of thing. But it was just an interesting day, interesting time where it was out of conflict that I forged my greatest relationships. It was out of those fights or those turmoils or those bumping of heads and, young boy adrenaline and testosterone and ego and all of those kinds of things. And we would duke it out or, push each other out, all of those kinds of things. And out of those conflicts actually came the greatest relationship or relationships of my younger life, and I look back at them with fond memories, and it's even funny or hilarious now, really, to think back at how much we hated each other at first, but it was working through the conflict that actually was the foundation of the best relationships of my younger years, right? And again, all of these episodes for season 4 are come out of my book that's coming out, The Life You're Meant to Lead. And this is bonus content. It's not in the book, so please get the book. It's still worth it. I'm not cheapening it, and you're not like, oh yeah, I already heard that. This is extra stuff you can't get in the book. So thanks for listening to the podcast. But how do we stop avoiding conflict when we now live in a day and age that avoids conflict at any cost? And we live in kind of a passive-aggressive society where we'd rather just send an email or a text message or anything to avoid person-to-person or face-to-face conflict or all those kinds of things. And I've been there. I've probably done it. I've certainly been the recipient of it, where you get this aggressive text message and you're like, what is the deal? And then you talk to them and it's all sweet and you're like, wait a minute, is this the same person that sent me that text message, right? And it's just because we do everything to avoid conflict, but true conflict and dealing with it, right? That's the thing, is when we wrestle with those conflicts come such great rewards or enriched lives or enriched relationships, right? So let me read my notes that I got behind the camera there so I can make sure to get through all of these things. And again, this is extra content that I didn't get to put in the book to make sure it stayed down within the spacing and the page numbers. Otherwise, it was going to turn into an encyclopedia, right? But how do we stop avoiding conflict? We've got to understand that by addressing conflict, it defines our principles and priorities, and it helps us understand us, right? By addressing conflict, I'm able to understand my core values better than ever. By avoiding conflict and doing that at any cost, right? And saying, no, anything but that, and not dealing with it. What I do is I compromise my principles. I compromise my priorities by avoiding conflict. But by addressing conflict and dealing with it, one, it causes maturity in my own life because I got to learn those skills of how to artfully articulate and carefully articulate what I really mean. And if I'm being totally honest, the place I struggle the most at this is having conversation and conflict with my wife, right? It's so tough because I'm like, babe, how do I say what I mean without provoking you to conflict, right? That sort of thing. So by addressing the conflict and expressing those emotions, expressing those values, expressing those principles, it gives us a better understanding of our core self, of our core principles, of our core values. And every time we avoid conflict, we violate or we short circuit or miss an opportunity for the self-discovery journey of saying, what is a core value to me? What is a core principle in my life that I'm feeling like is violating? When we avoid, We let things run over us. We let circumstances run over us, and we justify them in our own heart and our own mind. And it's so important that while we are on the cultivated journey, while we're living this cultivated life and becoming the identity that we want to be, the person that we're meant to be, that we understand our core values, we understand our core principles. And the only way we continue to discover those things is by not avoiding conflict, but by addressing them. Now, I should be really cautious or caution you to say, I'm not suggesting that by addressing conflict that it's okay to be rude, or that it's okay to be impolite, or it's okay to be short, or it's okay to be mean. No, truly dealing with conflict isn't any of those things. Truly dealing with conflict is going to be more self-focused than others focused. Hey, when you did it, it made me feel this way. And it's less accusatory of saying, you did this to me, you did that to me, you behaved this way to me. No. That's not really dealing with conflict. That's throwing bombs, and that's fighting, that's arguing. That's not going to get you anywhere. But when you're truly learning the art and the skill, and let me just tell you, I am not a professional at this. So I am talking about this from a practicer or a practitioner, not a professional, okay? So please understand, I'm in the trenches with you on this, shoulder to shoulder. I'm in the mud with you on this. I get this wrong all the time with coworkers, with family, with friends, with my spouse, my wife, as I said at first, right? All of those kinds of things. So I am not a pro at this. But I do understand the principle that if I avoid conflict, I never really come to an understanding of my core values, my core principles in my own life. And when I'm dealing with these conflicts, it's important that we play by the rules. Or as one book said, you fight fair by making sure that you're saying, hey, when you did that, it made me feel this way, and this is a core value of mine, and so I'm expressing those feelings. I'm expressing that conflict. I'm expressing how to better communicate, and I deal with the conflict. The next side of it is, or the next thing about really dealing with conflict, is that until you and I have the courage to deal with true conflict, we'll never have authentic relationships. And we are all craving authentic relationships. We want them to be true. We want them to be meaningful. We want them to have depth, whether it's friends, whether it's family, whether it's romantic relationships with a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife, whatever the case is. Authentic relationships don't happen without addressing conflict. Why? Because addressing conflict is a pathway to trust. Right? How many times have you had this conversation or a conversation with someone and they're like, wow, I never knew you felt that way. Wow, I never knew you saw it that way. Wow, I never knew it was making you feel that way. And sometimes they're on silly little things of, it really bothers me when you don't put the clothes in the clothes hamper, right? It could be things that are not necessarily life altering, but it's super frustrating to somebody. And it could be something crazy like, it really upsets me when you don't put the toilet seat down because it communicates to me you don't care about my needs, right? And it could be all kinds of things, but by expressing the conflict, by expressing or addressing the issues, you build trust that I know where our relationship stands, and I know where you're at in this relationship, and you know where I'm at in this relationship, and so it means I can trust you. Trust isn't always about agreeing. Actually, it's not always about agreeing ever. Trust is saying, I'm going to know when we don't agree. That's when I can trust somebody that no matter what happens, you have my back and you want this relationship to be successful, because when we violate a principle or a core value of one another, I can trust that we're going to share it and it's not going to end our relationship. That if I say something that hurts your feelings, whether intentional or accidental, we're going to deal with it. And so I can trust the value and the strength and the fortitude of this relationship because we've dealt with conflict. If you avoid conflict at all costs, what it means is that relationship is on shaky ground. It's superficial. It's surface level only. Now, I have a lot of friendships, or maybe I should say acquaintances. I have a lot of acquaintances that we've never had conflict. We've never dealt with conflict. I would never expect those people to jump into the trenches with me and fight the hardest fight of my life. But there's other people now where we've dealt with conflict, where we've gone through hard times, we've shared each other's junk and shared each other's stuff. We've gone through those kind of nitty-gritty pieces and we've wrestled with them and talked them through and did that. Those people would go to war with me. Not against me, but with me, right? And that's when you know you've got the support, you've got the backbone, you've got the people behind you that even if you fail, it's a safe place to fail. That's another topic that we're going to talk about in this season, is being a safe place to fail. But you're never a safe place to fail if you've avoided conflict and you've tested the waters by going through a difficult conversation or a difficult season or a difficult obstacle that you have to overcome, right? And so that all comes through conflict, which builds authentic relationships, which is the pathway for true trust. It's interesting that the thing we crave is actually the thing we avoid the most, right? We want authentic relationships, but we avoid the conflict that would actually birth or give us the way or the avenue to authentic relationships. It's kind of ironic, isn't it? But in this cultivated journey, we do tough stuff, we do hard things, we overcome the obstacles, and the only way to do that is to stop avoiding conflict. And again, don't be rude, don't be harsh, fight fair, fight by the rules, keep it about you and how you're feeling and your principles and your core values as you discover them, and then you'll know that you're on the pathway of trusting one another. Say, this is somebody I would die for. This is somebody I would go to bat for because we've gone through the conflict and we've survived. Final thing I would just talk about, and let's just be real about, right? Conflict is messy. Why is conflict messy? Because we're messy. I might feel one way about something one day and completely different another day. And I might be in a good mood one day and a bad mood another day. And it might not be about anyone I'm in conflict with. To be totally honest, I came home the other day. It wasn't that long ago. We were going on a trip and I had set in my mind I wanted to leave by a certain time. And to be totally honest, I had failed to communicate with the rest of my family members that I wanted to leave by a certain time. You've heard me talk about I'm a checklist guy. So you do this, you do this, you do this, and we leave by this time. No one was ready to leave. I know it's hard to believe this. I can't even imagine why they wouldn't have been able to read my mind to know that I wanted to leave by this certain time frame because of how long traffic is here in Southern California and how far away the destination is. And you should know that I want to leave by this time. And I blew a gasket. And I thought about this later, like, how stupid were you, Tom? And it got really messy. Not because of anybody else in my household didn't know the time in my own head that I wanted to leave by. It got messy because I'm messy, right? And so here's the thing. Why am I saying all that? When it gets messy, we should give each other some slack. Because I know that in this case, the next time my wife behaves that way, or the next time one of my daughters behave that way, that I'm reminded I behave that way, and they have permission to be messy because I'm messy, right? And so we give each other grace and we give each other slack and we give each other permission to blow it, not because we like it, not because we accept it, but because we understand we're all in the same boat and we're all messy. But if it was easy, we wouldn't avoid conflict. But we do avoid conflict because it's messy. So just own that it's messy. And you know what's amazing is how great a conversation goes when you go, hey, this is going to be a little messy because I'm not sure I know how to talk about this, but let's talk about it. And it's amazing how much grace we give each other when we just own up front and vocalize that by addressing a conflict, it could get a little messy. And something I try to live by specifically with my kids, right? So I have teenagers. I have teenage girls. And so sometimes that can be a messy conversation. And sometimes I just have to own it. Like, hey, this is above the manual they gave daddy when you were born, because they didn't give me one, right? I didn't get that manual on how to raise teenage daughters. I'm figuring it out, which means I'm going to get it wrong. And it means they're going to get it wrong. And so if I give them grace to get it wrong, and I ask for grace for when I get it wrong, you know what? We contend together to get to the solution and the answer. And it's not always perfect. And it's, I don't want to paint a picture like our household is perfect, because it's not. We blow up all the time. Thus, I came home blowing a gasket that nobody knew I wanted to leave by this certain time. But we never grow. We never have authentic relationships. We never build trust if we're avoiding conflict. Man, so powerful. You can't get this from the book, but I want to encourage you to get the book and check out this show and other shows on our website, ourcultivatedlives.com. We'd also love for you to communicate with us. Share us some of your failures because they're hilarious. Share us some of your conflicts so that you can laugh about now. Don't keep the innocent names out of the picture, but we just, we learn and we grow from each other. So look us up on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitter, and soon to be on Pinterest, right? So you can find us there at Tom Hamill or ourcultivatedlives.com. And again, in living the cultivated journey, stop avoiding conflict. Until next time, I'm your host. Thanks for checking us out today. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on all the incredible content we have coming out. Also, we'd love to hear from you in the comment section. We read those, we respond to those as we journey together in the cultivated life.